So, hello, Isabelle. How are you?
Well, I'm feeling fine.
Good. I'm Jerry Hancock. I'm so glad to get to see you and talk to you today.
I'm anxious to talk.
Good. So, your full name is Isabelle Elva Reedy Powell, right?
Yes.
Are any of those family names?
Elva was my sister.
Okay.
In college, when I was a little girl, and she helped to take care of me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you were born on April 20th, 1923, right?
That's right.
You're only 2 months away from 101 years old. Do you realize
Yes,
that?
yes.
How does it feel to be over 100 years old?
Well, I don't know how I got there.
I know how you got there, by taking care of yourself. You've had an exciting life, haven't you?
I've done a lot of things.
Yes, you have.
I guess maybe the biggest thing that's the most outstanding thing that I did was go to India
Yeah.
on a Fulbright scholarship, I guess.
Yeah, I want to talk some more about that in a few minutes. So let's talk about growing up in Milbach, is it? Is that the way you say it, Milbach?
Melba,
Uh-huh.
yes.
And
It's a little village. There's a church and a schoolhouse and an old cemetery.
and the general store where you grew up, right?
Right,
And that was right across the street from the church, correct?
yes.
Yeah. So that was quite an exciting time to grow up, place to grow up, was it not?
It's a good place to grow up. And my father was the disciplinarian.
Yeah, I've gathered that. I've read a little bit about Milbach from your
Yeah.
autobiography, and it sounds like a really idyllic place to grow up. It was very calm and quiet, lots of nature to enjoy. I think you said you could walk in any direction and walk across a stream, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like growing up in Milbach?
Well, it's hard to say. There weren't very many people there. And as I say, one of the things that I will always remember is that we had an old stove. We all lived in the kitchen, really.
Right.
And so this one morning, the telephone rang in the hallway. That was unusual. But the message that came through was that I had to come home right away. And so, I pretty much ran all that distance.
You were at school. They called you at school.
Yeah, you were at school when they called you, right?
Well, the message that when I got home was that I had forgotten to bring back the coal bucket for my mother.
And that was your dad's way of telling you neglected your chores, right?
Get down and do, that's right.
So,
I'll never forget that.
I'll imagine so. That store must have been the center of community, wasn't it? I mean, it was like people coming and going from the community most of the time.
of people, and I was very young. Took the milk to a place where they picked it up and took it to be pasteurized.
Right.
And then on the way back, they stopped in and got their groceries for the day. So that was a good thing for us. But at the same time, the supermarkets opened up.
Yeah,
And so we lost a lot of trade.
right. But in the early days, you talked about riding your tricycle around inside the store. Do you remember that?
What?
Riding your tricycle inside the store?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Well, the house that I grew up in had been a hotel.
right. And how many rooms did it have? Like 13 rooms or more?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
about 13. And when you entered this side door, there was a bar right there, and big mirrors. I think, as I recall, it was like one mirror was like a lion, and another one was like a tiger.
Mhm.
And that whole, the floor was concrete,
Yeah,
and that's when I could take buy the tricycle. And that's where the warehouse was, where he had boxes of, cases of
groceries and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like-
So, and what caused your dad to want to buy the store, do you know? Why did your dad want to buy that store?
Well, I think it was right after the war. And he thought that it was a good thing to do.
Yeah. He had been a teacher, right? He was a teacher, right
He
out of
went to
town.
normal school.
Right.
And so my mother, we lived with my uncle who was MD. He always stressed that he was homeopathic,
Mhm.
and the opposing one was allegoric, I think. And,
Which was a drug, right?
well, the allegoric, homeopathic, as we were told, was trying to keep us well.
Right.
And the allegoric was medicine to help us get well.
Yeah. There were lots of stories about the store, but one of the stories was about your dad going hunting and lost his wallet, right?
Yes,
How did that happen?
well, to make a long story of it, I think it was at 32. When the Depression
Yeah.
hit us.
That was a tough time, right? That was a hard time, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. But what we remembered was that in the evening when the store closed, we always counted the money and the next morning took it to the bank. And then when the Depression hit, we only did that once a week.
Right.
Mhm.
And when he went hunting and lost his wallet, he had a lot of the store money in his wallet, right? That he was
Yeah.
planning to deposit. It was $700.
$700.
That's a lot of money.
And the neighbors all went with him, and they found it where he crossed a fence.
Right.
Mm,
So they found the wallet. That was good news.
Absolutely.
And your mom sometimes helped out in running the store as well?
Yes.
Did she like doing that?
Well, whenever he was a director of the bank,
Right.
and they had meetings once a week. And so then she filled in. And he was always afraid that she didn't write up all the bills.
Right.
But she did better than he thought.
Yeah. Well, you had great parents. Both of them were very organized and very strict on you, really, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever, I need to tell you about the Spanish flu. Back then, people came to the house if you were sick. And my mother would drive while the doctor took a little nap. And then when he took a little nap, she drove to the next house.
Oh, really?
And the interesting thing is, they never got the flu.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, but she had the house pretty well organized, didn't she? I remember you talking about Monday was wash day, Tuesday was ironing day,
yeah.
right? And then what was the rest of the week like? You had,
Well, Wednesday, I think it was you doing the mending.
yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
So she had something organized for every day, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. And Friday was marketing day. My grandparents went to market early Saturday morning and had their stand. They sold the eggs.
Hmm. Well, you had plenty of eggs at your house, eggs and chickens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whenever, during Depression, when people walked from one place to another to find a job, my mother always had a couple of eggs to make an egg sandwich.
Right.
So they never went without any food.
Let's talk about the Depression for a minute. Those two banks that your dad was involved in, both of them went down during the Depression, and he wound up having to take the loss for one of the banks himself, or his portion of it, as a director, right?
We did. Dad felt like you keep the bank open, And the directors made that good,
Yeah, and that took him a long time to pay that off, did it?
yeah.
I mean, that, my understanding was like till 1953, which would have been
I
20
think that's right,
20-some years, correct?
yeah.
Mm. What else do you remember about the Depression?
Well, we made clothes out of feed bag material,
Yes,
and I don't know,
and we're talking about the sacks that feed came in and flour and that sort of thing, right?
yeah,
Yeah, and you made clothes out of that,
yes.
right? Well, actually, those were pretty decorated sacks, weren't they?
They were,
Yeah,
they all were printed.
yeah. So what do you remember about junior high and high school when you were in school? What do you remember about school in Millback?
High school. Well, you know, I had a brother who was injured
Yes.
during delivery,
His name was Junior, right?
yes.
Mhm.
And he had to be carried, you know, downstairs. And my mother always bathed him in the morning. And we had a sort of a studio couch that was higher at one end. And so he was laid down on that couch for the rest of the day. And he really had to be fed. He was, well, my dad thought he was a very bright boy. He recognized all the people who came to the store by the
Right.
sound of their voice. And everybody, you know, that came in, I mean, a lot of them stopped and chatted with him.
So he died while you were in high school, right? Is that right? Did he die while you were in high school?
Yes. Yes.
And that had a big impact on you, did it not?
Beg pardon?
That had a big impact on you, didn't it?
Yeah. He, I guess, had a seizure, which threw him out of the bed. And so he died. Trying to think what time of day that was. It's the interesting thing is that my grandfather died about the same time. And nobody called it depression
Right.
back then. But looking back, I know that I was very depressed.
So,
My father thought the teacher wasn't doing well enough.
yeah.
And,
But you were really very sad about all that, weren't you?
yeah.
And that affected your schoolwork? Did it affect your
Yeah.
schoolwork, do you think?
And you know, I didn't realize how the impact that had on me, because this is a long time when all of a sudden I realized that, okay, nothing's just gonna make me happy. I was gonna have to get out of that depression on my own. And I called the university. I was in the basement doing some iron. I called the university and asked when they were going to have the test for the grad school. And they said, seems to me like they said 11 o'clock that morning. And I said, I'll be there.
Mm. So that's how you wound up in Greensboro? Is that correct?
So that's how you got into the doctorate program. So you were already in Greensboro. Yeah, and you were at the Greensboro house in the basement ironing and realized I need to make this happen.
Yeah.
And so then started the school at UNCG. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Let's go back to talk about one more thing about the depression. Your mom, your dad wanted to declare bankruptcy because of all the financial difficulty, right? And your mom would not hear of that.
yeah,
Right. So that was one time she put her foot down, is that
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
I also know that when he actually bought the store, she told him she would only let him buy the store if he did not sell beer, is that right?
yeah, and he couldn't have a spittoon.
Yeah, and he couldn't have a spittoon, right?
They had a square box in the middle.
She said they had to go, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So she was able to speak up when she needed to, right?
Oh, yes,
Right.
yes.
And do you think some of that rubbed off on you?
Well, I hope so.
I would say so, don't you think? Your dad was an interesting man, wasn't he? He had lots of things going on, and he was in charge of the Republican Party in Millbank, is that right?
Yeah,
And you had elections actually took place in your store, correct?
yes,
And my recollection is that your dad, if the election wasn't going the right way, he would go out and find some more voters. Is that
yes, yes.
So that was small town politics, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. He was a Republican,
Yeah.
and our neighbors were Democrats, but we just got along fine.
Yeah. I also know that before he bought the store, he was very much interested in learning, so he bought a set of encyclopedias, right?
He was what?
He bought a set of encyclopedias, do you remember that?
Oh, he worked for a neighbor, so that his worth was $10, and he got,
He worked and paid it off,
yes,
yeah. And later, I understand he loaned somebody the M volume of the encyclopedias. Do you remember that?
it was,
Somebody wanted to borrow the M version of the encyclopedia because they were studying Mennonites.
Mennonites.
Yes, right.
yes.
And he loaned it to him, and it never got it back. Is that right? Yeah, that's.
So we never got it back.
Yeah. He was an interesting guy, wasn't
my dad, it was very, I don't know what to say. He wanted to know a lot about everything.
Yeah.
There was one night when the sky just opened up and everybody was frightened. They thought it might be the end of the world. They didn't really know. And he said it was the Aurora Borealis.
Right.
And I was so proud of him
Yeah.
that he knew what it was and it wasn't anything frightening.
Right. Well, he also did some tutoring, right? He tutored some kids who were having trouble in school.
I guess when I was in elementary school,
Right.
when I was in first grade, I was sitting by the teacher's desk and I drew a card and she said, you know, you're not allowed to trace something. And I said, I didn't trace anything, I just drew it. And so I did get, I did get to do some little drawing piece.
Is that right?
Then, when I went to college, one of the first classes I was in was a class for three credits, and we were supposed to draw anything that we wanted to do. What I drew was the stone-carved images on the old cemetery.
Oh, really?
And there were sandstone mostly, but one I remember had a heart with dots around it. Well, some were on concrete where they had three going up, and I remember there was something written on the bottom that as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, you will be. Prepare for death and follow me.
Oh, really? In the 9th grade, I understand you had a little challenge with your teacher because the boys could take physics and the girls could not, is that right?
Yes.
And so you confronted your teacher about that? What did you say?
Well, he said that he would teach it since we needed it for college credit. But then, when we got our grades, my friend and I had about the same. Mine was a little higher, but it was the average. but then the teacher added 30 to it.
But he still only gave you a C, right? Is that what I remember? He did not give you a good grade for that class?
No,
Yeah. And you also were upset that the boys could do patrols, but the girls could not, right?
yeah,
So even in the ninth grade, you were already a rebel rouser, were you not?
I just go to the principal
Yeah,
and tell him I thought that we could take the children across the street.
yeah,
And he agreed with that.
really?
Surprising. So, you get out of class 5 minutes early
Yeah,
so that you could help all people get across the street. So, we did that. We went to, a celebration, I guess, where people, like for the AAA, they were given a holiday. And what we girls decided to do was wrap an inner tube in white and they looked like lifesavers.
oh, yes, right.
And we said, we're lifesavers. We are. And, well, we got a lot of publicity.
Yeah, so your friends helped you out with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So let's talk about from high school to how did you get to Greensboro? How did you get to college? How did you get married? Let's talk about all of that. Where did you meet your husband?
At a USO.
USO. And how did that, my understanding is that at least one date that you had, you were late getting there because your car broke down, is that correct?
Yes.
How did that happen? What happened then?
Well, there was a mechanic that came by, and he said, well, my sister was going to stay with the car. And I went with him to the Weimar Hotel. And so he had what we needed to repair, the fan belt.
Right, yeah.
And so
So when you got to the restaurant and found David, was he waiting on you for your date? My understanding was that he had fallen asleep.
at the USO, you know, we were supposed to take the first person that we met,
Mm-hmm.
but the person that I met, I didn't think I could do anything for him and anything for me, so we went into the powder room until they went away. So then I got on the wall And turns out that David just knows that I shouldn't be a wallflower. So, and he wants me with it the rest of the time. So we sat at a table and had a Coke, I think. And then before he left, he wanted to know how he could contact me. What he said was he didn't know that there were any pretty girls along the Laserdiscs of mine.
How about that?
So, we weren't supposed to get later, find us. And I remember thinking, there's Cleona and there's Lebanon, but that wouldn't do. So then I thought, if I gave it by Sheridan, he'd never find me. And so that's what I did. I gave him my Sheridan. I just said Sheridan. And, but he found out.
But you had no idea that you would get married and have a long life together, right?
Well, he found out that what I'm trying to say, there was a bus that took the workers to work in the morning and in the afternoon to take her back home. And would you believe he got in that bus? And the next thing, I found that he was at
Wow.
my house.
So, you came to Greensboro in 1946, right? After you married? Is that the time frame? Does that sound right?
Yes, Thanksgiving Day. We were married on Thanksgiving Day.
And my understanding was that because of the rationing of sugar, that other kids had to give you some sugar money to get enough sugar to make your cake?
Yeah,
Is that right?
that's right.
Yeah. So what was it like when you came south after being in Philadelphia? How did it feel?
What was it like?
How did it feel to come south?
Well, we knew that blacks and whites didn't get together. They lived separate lives. One thing I told my friend the other day, and she said I should tell you this, that when I was working in the bank, my office was upstairs.
Daddy, David. When David was working at the bank.
David, your husband worked at the bank, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And his office was
And
upstairs.
The ledgers were books.
Mm.
Like one page was like this, fall over.
Yeah.
So, but I suggested to the boss that since my office was upstairs, it might be the time to introduce blacks with whites. And
So David was the first person to hire a black in that bank, is that right?
yeah. And then he didn't know what to do to it would be agreeable. So so this staff had a place downstairs where they all sat together and had lunch together.
So were you surprised to see that there was that much prejudice in the South?
Well, so he just decided, he said, you know, I go to that Chinese restaurant every day. And I don't need to be waited on to be seated. So they went down Green Street. Maybe I forgot it. Across the street and came back here. And we didn't wait to be seated. We just walked through and sat down where I always sat.
No.
And he sat across from me. And nobody said anything.
Mm.
So we broke that barrier.
Yeah.
Mm.
So talk about when you started work at the university. When did you start work at the university? At the college? When did you get the job at the college? Do you remember that?
Well, when I went to the university, the first course that I took into sociology was social problems. And so I wrote an article starting with sort of like a preface of some sort. And then how that could be resolved. And what I sowed was that the main problem the teenagers had was that the girls got pregnant. And they were dropped out of school right away. the guys could stay at school, but they no longer could be in athletics. So
So you wrote a paper about that, right? And was able to
Yes.
get that changed. So did the university then start a program for unwed mothers? Is that what they did?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I got a grant from Smith Reynolds.
Well, that was quite an accomplishment for you, wasn't it?
So, and I got the guidance counselors to identify some of the girls who needed help. And what I did was employ really volunteers mostly. To help them earn the credits
Right.
they needed for graduation. And then what happened is that they really were expelled immediately and came with us. And a lot of times we took them when they were in labor.
So your program was
And
helping these,
And they were not interested in yielding their children to adoption.
yeah,
And so what we had to do was set up a situation where we had a nursery. And so part of this large school room was screened off with a glass separation. And they brought their babies back when they were 2 weeks old.
wow. That's amazing. I mean,
We had a girl from our neighborhood who took care of the babies.
hmm. So how long did you teach sociology? Do you remember? You retired, what, 20 years ago, maybe?
I was there 19 years.
19 years. Yeah. And what got you interested in sociology?
Well, at the time when I joined grad school, the only things that I really thought I was interested in was psychology or sociology. And sociology, I mean, psychology would be both about me,
Yeah.
and sociology was the subject that covered over to a lot of organizations.
Yeah. So did you enjoy teaching sociology?
Yes,
Did you see a lot of students become interested in that?
yes. Um, uh, it wasn't the subject that was admired
Yeah.
by a lot of people. So there's one day
Um,
that I can't remember if it was he came in, wanted me to resign. And what he wanted to do was every freshman that should come in should start with religion, a course in religion.
mm,
And but if there was going to be a sociology course, it had to be,
Dr. Mark Moulton, Horizon Eye Care, our voice Syracuse.
it had to be rude. So, anyway, I got to teach that, and anthropology was part of that. I really liked that especially.
right. Well, I can see how your growing up years sort of prepared you for doing that kind of work, can you not? Very much so. When you were growing up, your sister Arlene was sort of your best friend, wasn't she?
Was what?
Your sister Arlene, when you were growing up, you had a sister named Arlene, right?
Yes.
Now, was she your best friend?
No,
No? Did y'all not get along?
we never got
Oh,
along.
really? But you got in trouble together, right?
Well, there was one night just that we did drive somewhere with a couple of guys from the town.
And you sneaked out of the house, and it was, when you came back, it was locked, right?
Yeah,
How did you get back in?
there was a window that I knew was open. So, that's a long story, but we
It's an interesting story.
got into the window, through the window, and we thought we could just come through. There was a stairway that it seems to me like it had a can of paint on the end. So it would go down and then go back up.
So you didn't get caught?
Well, then we still couldn't get back Father's room. So we went down to the root cellar
And you got it in that way?
and we went across the root cellar and got up under the, so we got in.
So, what is the most exciting thing you've seen in your life, do you think? You've seen a lot of change.
when my first state harem Bamberger introduced me to his parents.
Are you
I
think,
forgot whether it was Richard the Holstein or somebody else said that, well, she's okay, the marriage, but he still understood that they would have nothing to do. Nothing to do with the Dunkards.
are we talking about David?
No. That was Hiram and Lucy?
But
Was that Hiram and Lucy?
yes,
When he married Lucy? Yeah, these are grandparents.
No, okay.
Yeah. So Jerry was asking though, what's been your most, what's the biggest memory you have of your life? What's the biggest change you've seen in your
well,
life?
that's- I was going to talk about actually Harb and Lucy, that, you know, they wouldn't intermingle because like Harriman was not supposed to lose to marry Lucy. Catholics were not acceptable.
No. Can you talk a little bit about your trip to India? How did you like your trip to India?
Well, we were studying development, and we were interested in whether religion or education, whether they made a difference in development of India.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, there was lots of sociological stuff to study there, wasn't there?
yes,
Yeah.
and we I'm getting, I think the first time I went was with the American University in Washington. And interesting, the dean was a peachy. And I told him that the only peaches I knew were Mennonites or Amish, and they agreed that they could never go back. And think it was the Italians that could go back.
Well, thank you for talking to me. This has been fun. Have you enjoyed it?
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much. You've had a very rich life. You've had a lot of impact on a lot of people, and there's a lot of people very proud of you.
Yeah.
For,
I wanted to say that when I started this teenage program, there were 54 girls
that's amazing.
who got their degree.
Those women and so many more, thank you for all the things you did.
Yeah,
So, I've enjoyed talking to you.
I've enjoyed talking with you.
Good. I'm going to give you a happy birthday early.
Okay.
Thank you for being with me.